Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
The Bachelorette and Friends. From first love to happy ever after.
What's that?
From dating to dick pics.
Oh my. Oh no!
The Bachelorette and Friends. Oh, I love a good dick.
This podcast contains sexual references, coarse language, and adult themes from the beginning and throughout. It is not recommended for listeners under the age of 15.
Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to the Bachelorette and Friends. I'm your host, Carla Anita Matiazzo, and today's guest is a wedding coach at Weditate. Please welcome to the podcast, Kate Morris.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on, Chicky Babe. Can you tell us a little bit about your business before we push on to the rest of the podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you couldn't already tell, I am from the UK. I'm from Liverpool, and I moved to Australia coming up to 3 years ago. And I have a background in weddings, usually within venues. And I decided during a pandemic to set up my own business in weddings because I'm a little bit insane. But Weditate, I am a wedding coach, which means I do a bespoke service for each client with a focus on a specific problem that the couple may be having or having trouble organizing. And I will show them how to manage their wedding checklist as well as the stress levels and anxiety. So yeah, that's where the idea is born.
So do you think many couples struggle with the organisation part of a wedding?
I think it can be a by individual basis. I've met some clients that they thrive off the idea of being organised and having checklists. And then there's others that don't realise how much of an emotional juggling act it can be until they're already in it. So the idea really was born on the idea of me understanding how stressful planning a wedding is. But then if you chuck in a mental condition like anxiety, then it just gets so much bigger and really overwhelming. And I thought it was so sad at the idea of someone that had anxiety, had this dream vision of a wedding, but maybe didn't commit to having it because they thought that's going to flag up the anxiety, that's going to do that, that's going to do this. So it was born from that idea, but then it evolved when I met more people that were not anxious people, but then they found that they were getting very high levels of stress, or they were feeling anxious and they didn't know how to cope with that feeling. And it was triggered during planning a wedding. So I thought that it was a service that could help a wide spread of people, but there are definitely ones out there that love being militant, like I call them the monikers, like Monica Gellers, like they love the wedding binders and the checklists, and that's great. But yeah, like it's no secret that planning a wedding, no matter how small or big, is stressful. It is just a head wreck in a lot of ways.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think things come to the surface and get sometimes out of control when people are planning a wedding?
Personally, I think it's more of a pressure. So there's pressures that have been instilled, particularly in women, because for a long, long while, getting married was the pinnacle of a woman's life. They would be in arranged marriages, or they would be suited with other families. So like growth of wealth could happen. And it was the major event of a woman's life. And I think subconsciously, a lot of the time we still carry that idea with us. And aside from that, it's things like gender norms. There's these things that are being fed into you, and you don't realize that they are triggers until they happen. So a great example would be when you call someone bridezillas or it's the bride's day. If those sorts of terms, they came from somewhere, and it's pressures. It's just an insane amount of pressure for something that is just a day at the end, like at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And as well with the modern world that it is, a lot of family dynamic is a popular stressor for people. They know that they don't want to disappoint their friends or their family and will somehow be coerced into decisions that they didn't really want.
Yeah.
That is where a lot of stress and a little bit of resentment, I think, comes from weddings these days.
Yeah, I think I've had friends and family that have been pushed into the big wedding and they've had to go into debt to satisfy family members or whatever because that was the expectation. Do you think also there's such a big focus on it being perfect and the woman's day and all that kind of stuff because society still does not celebrate women enough for their achievements? I was talking to the other day a comedian called Jacques Barrett, and he was talking about that, you know, in society women are still not as celebrated as they should be, and maybe that's where the I must have a perfect big crazy wedding comes from.
I think it definitely plays into it, and I would argue that there is a flip side, that we're edging in as women, and we are in this like time in our lives where, you know, we want to have it all, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, but now more than ever, you will find that women will still stay at work and have a baby and try and keep up like a home life, and there's absolutely all the power to you, ladies, and so you should. And I think the flip side almost is that if you do try and have this huge successful wedding, it's almost like, aren't you this like big super power woman? Like, why are you worrying about getting married? So you're questioning having traditional values like getting married. So I think it's just, you just push the book like even more, and it means to be a successful woman, and it's hard. But I think there is, just from years and years of it being, like I say, this pinnacle moment, it's this insane amount of pressure that, like, look what she can pull off. Like, she survived this really stressful planning phase, and, like, that was the result. Isn't she amazing, this Wonder Woman? And now it's like that sort of argument of looking beautiful as well on the day. It's just all of these roles and these hats you have to wear. It's just crazy.
Yeah, it's been insane.
Yeah, and definitely not what I try and coach. I try to guide couples into finding an intention. Marriage is one thing entirely. It is a commitment. It's not a big party. Like, by all means, have a party if you want, but like really start from, why are you getting married? What is the intention there? Is it to set up a family? Is it a financial thing? Like, so really know what it is that you're getting married for first, because you may find after having a chat with your partner that you don't need to get married to have the thing that you think a marriage is going to achieve.
Yeah.
So it's just start from the intention, and that is the foundation of what I try and coach, because when the stresses down the line with planning do come up, or family dynamics and politics start making a play in your plans, it can keep you grounded and can make making decisions a lot easier, because you know, does that choice align with the intention I set from the beginning?
I think that's really important, because it's all well and good to just tick off the things on the checklist and get completely lost within that. And then you get to the date. Look, I've never been married, so I'm hypothesizing here. Then you get to the day and I would imagine walking down the aisle and being like, I actually haven't checked in with this person for the last 6 months of planning this wedding. Do I fucking want to marry this person anymore? Like, what are we doing?
Yeah. And sometimes this is pretty much the biggest horror story that I've had in my time as a planner. I have had a couple that realized they weren't a match.
Oh, fuck.
And they discovered that when they saw how they were planning something this huge. Like, there is the old age tale of, like, find out if they're the person for you when you move in together. That's when you know. But this couple, they found out, wow, I didn't know that you had this kind of tendency. I didn't know that you were like this. And they broke up in the fact of planning a wedding and realized that they weren't a match. It's a little bit awkward.
Guess what, lovers? The Catchalorette, There's Always a Catch, is back on stage in 2021. First up, The Mill, Adelaide Fringe Festival, from the 18th to the 28th of February, 7:30.
Tickets on sale at the Adelaide Fringe website.
Okay, so to bring the listeners up to speed, this podcast is based on the premise of my award-winning cabaret show, The Catchalorette, There's Always a Catch, where I talk and sing about my first love to what I thought was happy ever after and everything in between. Okay, so let's start there. So can you remember your first crush, Kate?
Oh my gosh. I feel like there's crushes that I remember, but they make me laugh at how insignificant that time was, if that makes sense. But I think my first crush, I was probably in primary school, and there was a guy in the year above me. And it was all very, very innocent. And I think it was probably because he looked a little bit like Leonardo DiCaprio. And now when I think back, it's just the 90s and everyone wore their hair in those kind of curtains. But I think that was the only thing this poor lad had going for him, is that he had Leo DiCaprio hair. Golden prince that he was.
So did anything happen from that crush, or it was just admiring from afar?
Oh, admiring from afar. I am a self-confessed awkward, and it took me a long while to even entertain the idea that boys would like me back.
Yeah.
I was a little bit of a misfit at school, always was. I had these glasses that were super, super thick and made my eyes look like huge and bug-eyed. And I just had this knock of confidence from so young, and I just didn't think it would ever be like a mutual interest.
Oh,
so
darling.
I still at 31 years of age, still trying to find my confidence.
I think we all are in some way, shape and form, and I would not have ever picked that you were an awkward, shy little kid. I would not have ever picked that, because you're so outgoing, you're so positive, you're so easy to talk to. Well, you've come like full circle then, really.
Yeah, I think that really sort of started to shift in high school. So I've always wore these glasses, and they are a huge trigger for me feeling a little bit self-conscious. So I started wearing contact lenses in high school, and I was still in a bit of a group of friends. Like, I loved them dearly, but I think they'd all admit that we were all a bit of a band of misfits as well. And I would get picked on a little bit in like year 7, like the first year of high school. And then I don't know what it was. It just one day I decided I'm not about this story anymore, and tried to flip the script. So I started signing up for the school talent shows and tried to find artistic outlets. And I found it to be a great escape, and to put this other like skin on, if that makes sense, like this character. And I found that from doing that, even though sometimes people would make comments about like how lame talent shows were, or they'd never picked on me again. Like,
yeah,
it was, I wasn't accepted into like this popular clan, but they left me alone. And if anything, things got a bit more conversational, and I realized that there was nothing to fear. I was getting in my own way by judging how they were going to see me. So I just flipped the script. But it didn't happen until high school.
That's brilliant, though, and it says a lot about performing arts in general, helping foster like young people coming out of their shells. I know, being an ex-teacher, having seen kids come out of their shell through the different things that they learn throughout performing arts classes, it's brilliant. It's really good. I think it is completely, and obviously in this time in the world as well, it's completely undervalued, which needs to change. So
Absolutely.
from first crush, what was the steps in high school? I like to talk about high school relationships being like training wheel relationships, because you work out boundaries, you work out what you like, what you don't like, without the whole adult pressures and responsibilities.
Yes.
What was your first training wheel relationship like?
Oh, right. Okay. And so I started dating a guy that was in my high school in year 11. So it's the last year in UK high school before you go off and go to sixth form or to college, or go TAFE it would be here. And it's funny because I said yes and then went home that same day and told me mum, I don't know if I really like this guy. And she's like, well, why did you say yes? I was like, I don't know. I just kind of was taken aback that someone had asked me out. I've been in high school for 5 years, and this is the first time that anyone had asked me out. So I said yes. I thought, like, well, I'm 16, you need a boyfriend at some point. So I'd say, yeah, that was my training wheel relationship. And gosh, I learned my lesson the hard way.
What did you learn, Kate? What did you learn?
So I look back and now with the privilege of age to see how naive I was, and got into a relationship for the wrong reasons. And it showed, because we were in a relationship for about a year and a half. We finally did break up from high school and move on to, I went to a college and he stayed on at the school sixth form. And we drifted apart, as you do at 16. You meet new friends and have like new hobbies and whatnot. And all the while, he was at the high school that both of us attended, and our mutual friend, who was my best friend. So when we broke up, immediately after, they started dating.
Oh, God.
So it was a very awkward, and probably I'd say the first adult decision I had to make. It was, do you want to be okay with this? Your best friend and your ex-boyfriend being a couple, or do you want to lose your shit and say exactly what you think? And I made the wrong choice and said that I was okay with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like at the time it was painful, and I'm very dramatic and angsty and teenagey. But they ended up dating for 10 years.
Fucking hell.
Yeah, so I think, if anything, I got used to being grown up and having grown up relationships before they did, because they were together for a really integral part of growing up. And I did feel sorry for them when I heard that they had broken up, because they've been with one person from such a young age, now 26, and not knowing how to start over. They don't know how to meet people the same way that everybody else was their age. So I did really have my heart go out to them.
How would you have played that differently then? I would have been very uncomfortable.
It was very uncomfortable, and I didn't mind so much them being a couple, because like I say, I think I got into that relationship for the wrong reasons anyway, and it did work itself out. We both had good times, and the relationship as a whole was fine, but we started becoming young adults, and we evolved. So it wasn't so much upset that they had found something that fitted better as those two than me and my ex-boyfriend. But I think the lesson that I learned was I thought I was being a better person by putting my feelings on hold of being uncomfortable. And I wish that I would have realized a bit more self-worth and said and spoke my mind. because my friendship with my friend did disintegrate after that.
Yeah.
And it's because she asked me a question about our relationship because she wanted to know, it sounds crude, but she wanted to know how far we had gone together, like sexually.
Right.
And I told her the truth. And he swore that I was lying.
Oh, shit.
Probably to preserve his own, how he looks to her. And she chose to ignore my truth and continue the relationship. So we did fall out, and then that was that. So I think I wish that I would have said from the get-go the truth of how I felt, that I don't mind you being together, but I do think this is a shitty thing to do, rather than trying to look like I was okay with it. Because I genuinely believe that started a bad habit of not speaking my mind and feeling, you've always got to look like you're okay. You've always got to look like this doesn't bother you and you're not fazed. And it took a while to get out of that habit.
Do you think that is a human condition in general, or do you think as females we are conditioned to make everybody else around us feel comfortable and put our feelings and what we feel on the back burner for the sake of everybody else?
Me, in my experience, and I never would want to tar any sort of gender with one brush. I do think it's more common within women to try and keep the peace and keep everybody comfortable and not look hysterical is like the main thing. And my mum has been such a guide to me, and she's an amazing woman. She's done it all. But sometimes, like, coming from different generations, I look back at advice that she gave me, and I would never do that now. Like, she would always advise, like, the old school, don't speak to them for 3 days. Ignore them for 3 days. They'll come chasing you. They want to chase you. Men are hunters. And now I think, no, if I want to hear from the guy, I will message him. I would never follow some of the advice that my mum would say. But I do think it comes from a generational thing of, like, you don't look hysterical, you don't kick off, you don't say this, you always look calm and collected and like you're not fazed about anything that we do. And I'm like, no, if they've upset me, they need to fucking know about it.
Do you think that's an English thing though, Kate? Because I know as an Italian, my emotions, I'm getting better as I get older, but people know when I'm not happy. I'm not good at masking. Do you think maybe it's a cultural thing a little bit as well?
Oh, we love an apology. We love saying sorry over in the UK. But honestly, I don't know if it's just a coincidence, but there's so many people in my life, friends and family-wise back home, and they've got no problem. They've got no problem saying how they feel. But certainly in my household, it was like, try and keep, calm and collected. Don't let them know that they got to you. But I think as well, it comes from a little bit of a background of being bullied. So I think my mum is trying to do a blanket rule of don't let them know that they got to you. So I think it's more of like she's protecting me rather than protecting the third party. But I think, unfortunately for me, it's turned into a coping mechanism, which in turn caused more problems than it solved. So I 100% agree that as much as you think that you can hide your emotions, it's not worth it. It's always worth telling the truth and how you feel and dealing with it that way.
And there's ways in which you can do that without being destructive, I find. Something that I know that I'm trying to work on is not allowing myself to respond from the first immediate emotional response that I have from whatever it is. So I will allow myself to either go, I'll get back to that later when I feel more neutral about it and I can just see the facts and deal with the facts. But I think there is also strength too in allowing yourself to go, okay, well, it's okay that I feel XYZ from what I received or what somebody said to me, like allowing yourself to sit within that feeling and then allow yourself to let it go. And then if you need to, deal with whatever it is at hand. Because unfortunately, dealing with heat, like someone losing the plot and then you come back and lose the plot, that nothing's going to be resolved there. People are just going to say things that they don't mean. Nothing's going to eventuate from that other than I never want to fucking see that person again, get them the fuck out of my life. Yeah, so it's a tricky thing balancing the yes, I'm going to be true to how I'm feeling and dealing with the issues at hand. It's a balance. Tricky balance. And yeah.
It's valuing yourself as well. Because I do have a very anxious brain and I overthink a lot. And sometimes I go too deep and think like, that person probably means this or is thinking this. And I would spend more time in my own head of assessment and analysing situations than just outright asking, like, where do we stand? What's going on with this? And anxiety has helped me in some regards because it does give me that break. I very rarely have flare-ups or react straight away. I do have some times that I have thought things through, but probably too much.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the only saving grace with having a very worrying kind of personality is I very rarely get into fisticuffs that way, where I fire back straight away. But when I do, it's usually a bit too emotional.
But
yeah,
why do you think?
I think it is.
Why do you think, Kate, having an emotion or an emotional response has such a negative connotation underlying it? Why do you think it is such an issue for women to have an emotional response to something? Why are we so quick to, okay, we need to make sure we come at this at a specific angle instead of allowing that emotion to drive us, like I was saying before?
Yeah. I think it goes back to our tribe mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Anxiety is bred from a feeling of being isolated by your peers. And if you're out of the tribe, you won't survive. Of course, that won't be the case now. But when we, particularly when we're teenagers, and you want the exact same things as your friends have, and you want to go and do everything that your friends are doing because you don't want to look like you're the outsider. You want to be in with the pack as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there is a crossroads that come with dealing with difficult situations or conversations, that there's a quick snap assessment of what will I achieve from this reaction? And particularly with women again and trying to keep the peace, I can only imagine it from wanting to look as suitable as possible, if that makes sense. And again, not to kind of tar everyone with the same brush, but I don't think men have to deal with that very often. And they know that they will be fine. They know that they are going to be okay and have nothing to prove in that regard. But that is a very big sweeping statement. I understand that, but it's just a little window into how I feel that it's a long habit of trying to be as suitable as possible and as accepted.
Yeah. You've hit the nail on the head there about being accepted. I think that's a big issue because a few things that you've said about analysing and worrying, I'm exactly the same. I find it really useful when I'm creating a new show or creating content or whatever it is. That analytical mind is great for doing that. But when I break down a scenario in my head of the few different ways it could go, you're so right. Just asking the question of, where do we stand here, or what's going on? I'm processing what you've said like this. Is this how you intended it? However, the problem is then the person that you are asking to be honest may not be honest, and may therefore then when somebody you ask to be honest is not being honest about the situation because they don't like conflict or whatever it is, then makes me worry even more. When somebody is not upfront and going, yeah, you fucking pissed me off and this is why I've written this to you, or I feel like you've done X, Y, Z, so that's why I said this to you, whatever the scenario is, I'd prefer somebody to have that uncomfortable conversation with me rather than hide behind bullshit that has nothing to do with anything.
Yes, no, agreed. And it's a common theme that's run through a lot of my relationships, like love relationships, friendships, work relationships. You know, it does take a lot of trust that the other person will be honest with you. And I couldn't tell you the amount of times that I've said after the fact, after I've already been upset that the damage is done, I wish that you would have just told me, even if you thought it would hurt me feelings. I would rather be hurt in the moment than be hurt after you've already done it without consideration of me. And that is something that I believe would resonate a lot with people that are meeting guys and girls on Tinder when they ghost you. It's like, I'd much rather you say you lost interest in this, break me heart in the moment, but then I have closure and I can move on, rather than, you know, question if it was something personal, or it's just, I really fail to see what's not to gain for everyone in that scenario. Just being honest with what's the boundaries. Like, are we seeing just each other? Are we allowed to carry on using Tinder? Like, that should be a conversation that you have so early on. Like, what are you looking for? And then if it fizzles out, these things happen. Not everything turns into something huge. Yeah. And that's okay. But it's just like, what did you think was going to happen by not telling me the truth of that? Like, you would have got your way either way.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think it's, speaking of online dating, that's why I feel so uncomfortable on that medium, and I haven't been on it in such a long time, because I don't feel like I'm dealing with the honest version of that person. Just like, obviously, when I did use it like years ago, I would put your nice photos up there, you know, because you want to put a good product out there to the world. But I found my problem was when I was asked, what do you want from this? And I would always be real honest with what I wanted in when I was conversing with whoever was on there. And the fact that I was honest and upfront was an issue. Was an issue for guys whether it's because, look, I'm at the point in my life where I'm very content with how my life is right now. I'm very happy with what's going on. I could continue this way until I die. Yes, it means that I won't have kids, I won't get married, whatever, but I'm all for, and I've said on other episodes, I'm all for two individuals being really happy and content in their existence and then coming together as a really good team, you know, and adding sprinkles of happiness onto each other's lives.
Sprinkle it everywhere.
But I think the issue comes about when people are not able to have different wants and needs in their life and just accept that somebody else wants something different, move on. Don't abuse the person for wanting XYZ or not wanting XYZ. There's no point in wasting somebody's time by just having a go at them because their stuff's not in line with yours. If somebody doesn't want to get married and have kids, that's fine. The way that I want to get married may be very different to the normal conventional way of getting married. I think we're in a time in society where people thrive on pointing out, just because somebody else's point of view is different, that means it's wrong, and how outrageous they are for thinking that. Instead of going, you've got a different opinion, I've got a different opinion. Okay, this means that's not going to work. That's okay. All the best to you. See you later. And I also just didn't feel safe on the apps. I had too many experiences where it just wasn't a safe situation. So I just didn't proceed with that stuff. And I think I'm also a bit old school in the fact that I want to be surprised. I don't want to be looking per se. But really, from what I hear from all my guy mates about Tinder and Bumble and all that, they're like, Carla, it's just for fucks. It's not for relationships.
Yeah, and it's so difficult because, as you say, if the other person isn't going to be honest with you or not handle what it is that you're looking for, then what are you left with? And what is it that you're looking for on these dating apps? Like I couldn't imagine going back. I don't know if I could cope. I have a partner now and I'm so lucky and so happy. But if it was any different, I don't know if I could handle it. Like, I have had brief experience with dating apps, and I've got to say they're all awful. And I do have one of my best friends from university. He did meet his now wife on Tinder. So I know that there are success stories, and I think everyone does want to have that, and they think that would be, they'll be different. They'll be the exception to the rule. But it's very few and far between. So if you are in a position where you are happy and know that you're going to be okay with whatever the outcome of these dating sites, go for your life. But it is, if you're not in the right frame of mind or using these websites for the wrong intention, it's a recipe for heartbreak. Yeah,
it is. And how's the boyfie going? How's Mark going? Is he good?
He's good. He's really well. Yeah.
So what's
he's been integral to the building of Weditate.
Oh, great.
So I feel it's something that we kind of like birthed together almost, because I couldn't have done it to the success that I've found it without Mark's help. And even if he didn't do anything at all, like that he has done, like build the website for me and help with all the technical things because I'm useless. But even without all of that, the commitment that he gives me, and he lets me, flesh ideas out and like just soundboard things, and I must bring up weddings and Weditate every single day for our lives. He's so patient and lovely, and I wouldn't have been able to do it without him.
Oh, good job, Mark. How did you guys meet, Kate?
We actually met at the venue that we were both working in. So when I moved to Australia coming up to 3 years ago, it's a really crazy story, actually. So I knew I needed a change, especially after a bad breakup, and I wanted to start over and have a fresh start. A friend of mine who is from Victoria originally, we had met in the UK. He'd been on this huge trip around Europe and decided he wanted to move back to Australia. And he knew that I was suffering and needed this fresh start. And he suggested that I move to Australia and live with him and his girlfriend. And he'd help me, find jobs and get me set up. So that was on Boxing Day that invitation came out 3 years ago. And by the January, I bought the flight ticket without question. I was like, I need to pull a plug and I need to do it now. Because if I leave myself too much time to think, I don't think I'll do it.
Mm-hmm.
So the ticket was bought and I started making plans for the move. And an old manager of mine at the time, who was from Adelaide, was living in the same city as me. And I sent him a message and said, hey, do you have any friends in like bars or restaurants that might be looking for work? I'm moving to Adelaide in March. And he said, yeah, I've got a friend. His name's Mark. Just drop him a message. Here's his Facebook. So I sent Mark a message and said, hey, like I'm moving to Adelaide. Chris told me to get in touch with you. And Mark's like, yes, it's going to be after Fringe. Adelaide kind of dies after Fringe, so it might be a struggle. But when you arrive, just come in and see me. And that was that. That was the January. March rolls around and I arrived in the country on a Tuesday, had a little break on the Wednesday to get over the jet lag, and went into the venue on the Thursday, met Mark, and I had the job by the Saturday.
And then,
not because of the sparks flying or anything. It wasn't until a little while later that we started dating, because we're both from the UK and we're both quite old school with being professional at work. So I didn't want to date anyone. That was my intention. I didn't want to come to Australia and then jump just from one relationship and start looking for another. I wanted it to be a time of self-discovery and new adventures. And Mark didn't want to date anyone from work because he'd been burned by that kind of thing in the past. So it was just funny that neither of us wanted a relationship. And the rest is history. And then we found out, once we started dating, that we knew a whole heap of people, the same mutual friends, that we were working in different bars back in Manchester that were a street apart and never met.
oh, wow.
It's crazy. There were so many sort of 6 degrees of you know that person, I know that person, and you were, I was there. So there was a lot of times that our paths probably had crossed, but it didn't happen until we were both in Adelaide together.
Cute. So who asked who out? How did that all happen? If you guys are both like, I'm not dating anybody that I'm working with, who asked who out?
Well, he's here as well. So
Hi, Mark.
Oh God. So he's just here so we can hear all of this. We do tell a story often. Actually, we'll do a soft version of the story though, I think.
You can both tell it. Come on in, Mark. You can both tell it.
We, as hospitality staff tend to do after a day of work, we had a new menu, so we were all in to taste the food and get the tasting notes, rah, rah, rah. I had the day off, so I was keen to go for a drink after work and took the chance. And I asked around everybody who wants to come for a drink with me, rah, rah. Mark had somewhere to be, so he goes off. The rest of the team, we all go for a drink, and it got messy really, really fast. And then Mark came and joined us afterwards. It actually turned into a very late night of karaoke, and we made out.
Oh,
But
right.
as soon as the kiss ended, Mark looked at me and said, to my face, I shouldn't have done that. So I was like, are you fucking serious? I was like, okay, all right, whatever. That's fine. Let's just write it off as a mistake and let it be.
Mark.
Again, the anxious brain in me, a couple of days later, I was really freaking out of when we were next going to be in work, and that I'd booked it as a professional, and if it was going to be awkward. So I sent Mark a hey, I'm just a bit worried about the other night. Are we cool? Is everything all right? And I completely misread the message, but he sent me back a Rick and Morty quote saying, it's all good, dog. But I thought that he was being more pushing me away. It's oh, fuck this guy, whatever. Then a week after, it was Mark's birthday. So we're all back out again, having drinks. and Mark had been with friends all day and drinking all day. And later on in the night, he came up to me and said that like he was having second thoughts, and I was like, "No, dude, like you said, like this was a mistake. I'm not going down this road again." I went down the road again. And the rest is history. So it worked well. But I would say Mark would officially be the one that asked us out. It kind of happened naturally, but I think in terms of pulling the plug and like laying out feelings, it was Mark first.
Very good, Mark. Very good. Well done.
He's a good man.
Well done. Well done. So how long have you guys then officially been together for?
2 years. He's like looking like 2 years. Yeah, in July next year will be 3. So 2. Pretty much near enough. The whole time I've been in Australia, I did not want a relationship. The whole time I've pretty much had a boyfriend.
Oh, man. So how did you juggle the lovebird situation in a professional environment? So how long did it take before your colleagues cottoned on that you guys were in a relationship?
Relationship. I don't think that long, because a lot of them were there both times. And everything hospitality doesn't last as a secret for very long. But we didn't officially become like a couple until the July. So it was a couple of months where we just like, let's just see how this goes. And like, let's not rush in. Cause like I say, I came out from a relationship, like by then it'd been like over a year. It'd been quite a while. But I wanted to do right by Mark, funnily. Like usually I have in the past been a bit on the rebound and just rushed into something to try avoid those negative feelings and that heartbreak, which now is just ridiculous. And like I advise the whole world, please don't do it. Please don't. But I am self-confessed rebounder. And when it came to this with Mark and I really didn't want to make those mistakes. I saw something that I thought, I've not seen this in a very long while, if ever. I don't want to do your Kate neuroticness and fuck it up. So let's put the brakes on and take it at a snail's pace. And I'm so happy for it, because now we're still together and no problem.
So what was it, Kate? What was it that made you go, I want to keep this one? What made you lock in it's official, we're girlfriend, boyfriend?
I think it was just like little things that are Mark. Because Mark is very practical.
Yes.
And he says how he feels. Well, certainly to me, he says how he feels. And he didn't let himself be a closed book. And I don't know, I couldn't tell you these specific things, but it was the first time I'd noticed that I didn't have to put this filter on, like back to what we were saying before. I didn't have to worry about keeping the peace.
Yeah.
I felt like this is a sensible person that I can say, hey, that's kind of upset me, or hey, I'm feeling like this, or hey, like, and it was just okay, like, let's work through it. Let's work it out. And
that's great.
I don't want to put out this cliche, because I don't always think it's real. But when people say like it's easy, that's what it was, just an easy thing. It's like,
felt comfortable.
Stupid. Why am I still spending time thinking about this when I know it's the right thing?
Yeah.
But like, I don't want that to be misconstrued into thinking relationships or love is easy. It is not easy. It is work. And it's a compromise always. And the minute that it stops being a compromise, there's something wrong. Like the
but it's going to be a compromise between two people. It can't be one person just compromising completely for the other. Yeah.
No, it's like having a lot of something. A little of something or a lot of nothing.
Yes.
And I know which one I'd rather be on. And it's evident, like, the business is a prime example. Like right now, we've been working on a lot that is like, you know, my project, but it'll all come out in the wash, and there'll be something that Mark wants help with, and I reciprocate that back and divvy up time. Like I think that's what you really need to consider when it comes to relationships. Is like, it's not all of the things that you think you want at the beginning. It's all the parts of you that you didn't know you were happy to do until you found that right person. Because I was quite content with my own time, getting my own way, and fucking off to Australia and at the drop of a hat and doing what I wanted. Now I couldn't dream of it. And it's not to seek permission from Mark, but it's just like, hey, I'm giving you some respect of your time and our lives. Like, I'm going to do this, and you go with that. Okay, right.
Oh, that's beautiful.
But I didn't think I was that person until now.
Until Mark came along. That's really cute, Kate. That's very
love, feelings, growth.
That's really very sweet. So then, my final question to you, madam, is, do you believe in happy ever after, and what does that look like for you? Yeah, you've kind of touched on it through your business, but what does that look like for you personally?
Personally, I've got to confess, I did think of this answer after listening to some of the other episodes. Honestly, with some reflection, I think every relationship I've ever had that's ended has been a happy ever after. Every single one.
Yeah.
Because if they weren't, I'd still be in them. If it wasn't, like, so I think the things end for a reason, and you need to just appreciate that the experience of things and what you learn. I had a relationship before coming out to Australia, and it was a train wreck. It was awful, and I spent a lot of that time thinking that the problem was the dude. He was very aggressive, and he had a lot of hang-ups and a lot of things that he was working through. And once I gave myself some distance, I saw that I wasn't the person that I thought I was, and I was just as much of a dick to him than he was to me. And that was happy ever after, because I got out of it, and I've learned, and I've moved on and met Mark, and like currently right now it's a happy ever after. But so yes, I do believe there's a happy ever after, but it's not in this Disney storybook kind of thing that you expect, because that's not life.
Yeah, because we don't get to see what happens next. When Disney princesses marry their prince, we don't get to see the next day. Exactly.
Like Pocahontas, for an example, like she got brought over here and then died. So, you know, but the movie, it's just like this beautiful like partner where it's like, bye John, love you, thanks for that. But no, it doesn't
I think the only cartoon of happy ever after that I can think of that we see the next day is Shrek.
Yeah. Oh, and Tangled as well. I think there is a comment that they do get married, and so far it's all going good. But yeah, Shrek actually touches on some major relationship issues, because I think one of the sequels, they have kids, and Shrek's having a bit of a, oh God, this is stressful, I kind of want to be on my own again. Like, and who hasn't had a little brief thing, would I be happier on my own?
Yeah.
But just, we're circling right back around to what we said at the beginning, that anything worth having is work. Like, it should be easy in how you feel. You should know exactly that's how you feel, and that's easy. But working towards either wanting to maintain that feeling or change it will be work. And you'll be so happy that you did. And if it doesn't work out the way you wanted to, that's okay, because it wasn't meant for you. There's something else out there. And it might be your happiness is in yourself. And you can make that a team sport when you meet the right person.
Yes. Very well said, Kate. Brilliant.
Oh, God, I'm all philosophical. I didn't even know I had this in me until right this second.
Where can people find you on the socials, Kate, to ask you about Weditate?
Oh, please do. Even if it's just to have a little chat and just float a question by me, I would love to hear from you. So I've been really lucky in every single social media platform. All you have to remember is Weditate. Instagram, it's Weditate, Facebook, and TikTok, which is a new thing.
Brilliant.
Thank you. Now, Carla, trying me hand at TikTok.
Thank you so much, Kate, for coming on. You have been absolutely lovely. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you. So good to see you. And
lovely to see you.
I miss these days.
Thanks again, beautiful lady, and enjoy your afternoon.
Thank you very much. And thanks for having me. I really loved it.
The Catchalorette, with friends near and far, from heartache to catfish and sex toys. The Catchalorette and friends. See you next time, if you dare.
Bank of the West is offering the 1% for the Planet checking account. It gives back to the planet at no cost to you, and there's no monthly service charge with any deposit per statement. Only from Bank of the West. Learn more at bankofthewest.com/1%. Additional conditions apply. Member FDIC.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.